Figuring this out pretty much broke my brain. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, scholar, blogger, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about the structural edit. Now, before we dive into the meat of this week's video, I want to just provide a quick definition of what a structural edit is. So in a nutshell, the structural edit is the big overarching edit where the editor or yourself is focusing specifically on the story. They're looking at characterization and at the plot, which are the two core drives of any novel. Typically, a structural editor will read your entire manuscript while taking very careful notes of how each element within the story is working. Structural edits focus on consistency, believability, and effectiveness in terms of how you've carried out particular craft elements, such as voice and style, plot, pacing, tension, timeline, characterization, story arc, and character arcs. When you're going through a structural edit, you're looking at things like plot holes, inconsistency, lack of tension, pacing issues, whether there are irrelevant characters, whether the characters are believable, whether the work is engaging, and whether there are any areas of confusion. Basically, a structural edit is just that. You are looking at the structure of the story, rather than focusing on the line-level edit of making each sentence beautiful prose. You are instead taking a bird's-eye view. You're looking at the story as a whole. Is it working? Often, you will do this first initial structural edit by yourself before then hiring a structural editor. And the reason why you do that is because, frankly, we can't see our own work objectively. We need the eyes of others in order to pinpoint the faults in our stories. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be talking very specifically about my own structural editing process, which might differ from yours, or it might differ from the way that you would do it if you've never actually done one before. And rather dismissing the advice that I provide in this video, I want you to pause and to think how the information I'm providing could be applicable to you and to your story. Now, right now, as I'm filming this video, I'm actually smack bang in the middle of the juiciest part of the writing process. I've gone through 5 drafts of my current work in progress, and I'm really up to the stage where I've produced so much really good content that I really like, but it's really time for me to do a strong structural edit on the story as a whole. Now, the way I write is really quite messy, and it's quite time consuming in all honesty, but it's the only way I know how to write right now. The thing about the creative process is that it's not stagnant or fixed. It evolves over time. At least that's how it's been for me. Maybe you've noticed a similar pattern with yourself. And maybe my process is still so messy because I'm still trying to figure it out. And maybe that's really what this whole YouTube channel and my blog is actually about. It's just a way for me to document my discovery of my own writing process. Now, as I mentioned, over the last year or so, I have produced 5 drafts of my work in progress, and I've broken these into sections: Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. When I've completed any one act and I was happy enough with it, I sent it off to my supervisor for feedback. Once I received my last round of feedback from my supervisor, I knew that it was really time to survey the story as a whole. I needed to really take a look at the story that I'd actually written versus the story that was still in my head. And I needed to consider what changes I needed to make in order to make this novel the best novel it could be. Now, for the sake of this video, or if you choose to go and read the blog later, I'm going to present my structural editing process as a linear process, even though creative practices are far from this. In fact, they're much more cyclical, or even better yet, spiral, where you're starting at a particular point and then you're drilling down further and deeper into the work as you question the work, conduct more research, critically analyze what you've done, conduct more brainstorming, and all the while slowly tweaking the outline, which will then be the blueprint for your restructuring. After I received all of my feedback from my supervisor, I knew the first thing I had to fix was Act 3. Why? Because Act 3 is where everything comes together. If I know what's going to happen in Act 3, then I also know what needs to happen in Act 1 and 2. You're basically reverse engineering the plot by starting at the end and then working your way towards the beginning. Now I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I do this before I started writing? Why didn't I do all of this upfront work before I started creating that first draft? That is an excellent question. And the thing is, I actually did create an initial outline for the story, but maybe you were similar to this. I actually can't really figure out the story until I start writing it. Unfortunately, right now, this seems to just be the way my brain works. It's not efficient, it's very time-consuming, but it also means that I work quite quickly. So once I produce a rough outline and I've got a general idea of where I want the story to go, I write that first draft. And I tend to write in a very linear fashion from the perceived beginning, and then I follow my nose all the way until the conclusion. Essentially, I let the story lead the way, and this first draft is very exploratory. Now, there is a reason why people write outlines and why they figure out the ending before they start. And basically, it's because letting your nose lead the way can really result in a couple of problematic things. One being unresolved loops, 2, simplicity, meaning overly simple stories, and 3, it can result in a lot of overwriting and lazy writing. Now for myself, lazy writing usually happens when I fall into the trap of documenting and literally writing out, following my characters' every movements. I basically am writing out every single thing they do during the day, everything they say, and everything they think. Rather than challenging myself to only include what is actually relevant, I wind up just sort of being this like stalker of my own characters. But I digress. Like I was saying, I received all of my feedback from my supervisor and I knew I needed to fix Act 3. So I sat back and I looked at all of the threads of my story. What did I really want to say with this book? And what was I actually saying right now? In short, the first thing I really needed to figure out was the theme. I've spoken about theme before, but here's a brief recap. So theme is not a single word and it's not a question. Love, family, loyalty, what does it mean to be a good person? These aren't themes. Theme is a statement. It's something that you're trying to say with the work, the ultimate message. And within my own book, I was trying to combine 4 disparate elements together. Women, animals, the trickster, and the Anthropocene. Now it was up to me to figure out how on earth these 4 completely random topics actually connected, and most importantly, what was I trying to say about this connection? Figuring this out pretty much broke my brain. So how did I get there? How did I figure out what my theme actually was? Well, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of mind maps, and I also spent a lot of time doing productive meditation. Just quickly, productive meditation is a term coined by Carl Newport. You go for a really long walk, and you challenge yourself to break out of your normal loop cycles and come up with creative solutions. I've written extensively about it on my blog, so I'll provide a link below. The other thing I did was I palmed all of my problems off to my subconscious. What do I mean by this? The brain is a supercomputer that loves to solve problems. Basically, solving problems is its jam, and I had one hell of a creative problem that I needed solving. So I gave it over to my subconscious. First thing I did was I doodled around with some mind maps, just as a way to get my brain thinking about the story again and re-familiarizing myself with what was happening on the page. Then I grabbed a piece of paper and I literally wrote down, what is the connection between women, animals, the trickster, and the Anthropocene? What is the theme of my novel? Then I closed my notebook and I got on with my day. I went out for a long walk and I tried to focus on other areas of the novel that needed fixing, but that weren't quite as challenging as figuring out the theme. The following day, I went back to my desk with the intention of continuing all of this groundwork, which will later inform the structural edit, and I started getting into the novel. I started reading the novel and writing down things, little ideas for problem solving, and when I found that I had clicked over into a flow state, I grabbed a piece of paper and I did a fresh mind map all about what is the theme of this novel. And within 10 minutes, I had it. Once I landed on the actual theme of the novel, I felt as though I suddenly had direction. I now had something to work towards, something that I could shape Act 3 around. As you probably noticed from the title of this video, this is a two-parter, and for the sake of ease and to keep this video nice and short and consumable, I'm gonna stop there. In next week's video, I will speak very specifically and show very explicit examples of how I began to construct an outline for the structural edit of the novel as a whole. I so hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. This is the best way to support channels, and it makes all the difference. And if you don't want to subscribe, you can click the like button or leave a comment, because that also really helps. If you want even more writing advice, you can head to taraeast.com. There are over 150 blogs in the archives, so dive in and you'll find something in there, I'm sure, that will answer any creative questions that you have. While you're there, be sure to join my email newsletter, because when you do, I'll actually send you a free video training called the Follow-Through Formula, how to complete a long-term project. It's 5 easy steps, and it's a really supportive way to actually complete all of the creative goals that you have. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing. And I'll see you next week.